All right. People, just a reminder, we did send out a thing, but not everybody got it. So in case that's you, in case you're part of the crew that did not get the memo, this message may be a little bit mature. It's not going to be graphic or anything else, although that would probably not match anything you've seen if you've ever encountered media of any sort in this world. But just as a final warning / caution, if you are going to freak out, if you hear something like the word sex, feel free to go ahead and come back next week. No, don't leave. Stay here. Here's the thing. We've been talking about love. We've been talking about these 4 kinds of love in student ministry, in the middle school ministry. We've talked about the 4 loves, the 4 Greek words for love, and looked at each different piece of it. And today, I want to finally get to eros, the erotic or romantic kind of love, the love that includes all forms of relational connection between a man and a woman, and ultimately between a husband and wife, is what it's made for and geared toward. It's what the Greeks were trying to describe when they used this word. They were recognizing the difference between all these kinds of love. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, and the reason that we needed it to be a little more direct and a little more bold in the way we talk about it, is because, you guys, this world wants nothing more than to let you give in to every desire and every thought you've ever had and think that that's perfectly right and perfectly okay to just do whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as it feels good to you. That's what you should do. Now, anybody who, it's funny because we think of that selectively. We think of that as, something like, well, obviously I can't just eat candy all the time. Anybody ever eat so much candy you got sick? Anybody? Come on. Most of the guys have done this probably at Halloween at least, 3 or 4 times last year. Come on, or eating something else, you can't just live on that stuff. My brother used to try and live on nothing but cereal, and that's not good. That's not healthy. You can't just live on cereal. You can't just live on junk food. You need other nutrients. You need protein. You need, all the various vitamins and things that come in stuff that's not in a Hershey bar or not in a bowl of Captain Crunch. You need some real food. If you just eat that stuff, it's terrible for you. On the other hand, a little bit of it, or having some at the right times, is great for you, or the right kind of it. My wife is allergic to milk and dairy products. So eating chocolate is really, really, really not great for her, but dark chocolate is fine. And just a little bit of dark chocolate is actually really good for you. It's got some antioxidants and stuff. And so a little bit of dark chocolate can actually be a good thing. But even with that, just nothing but dark chocolate, there are sugars in it, and it'll rot your teeth if you just eat that and you never brush them and you never take care of it. In the same way, love misapplied at the wrong times with the wrong people in the wrong ways can ruin your life, can destroy your heart. It affects everything. It doesn't just affect a piece of it. And so, not that any sort of sin connected to this is any worse than any other, except that sin regarding the heart, sin regarding, connected to sexual acts, to connections between a man and a woman, or any sort of diversion of how that's meant to be, can hurt you, not just physically. It's not just, oh man, I hope I don't get pregnant, or I hope I don't get an STD. It's not about that only. There's that stuff, but there's longer lasting consequences and thoughts to have. On top of that, it affects you emotionally, whether you want it to or not. And our world says, no, it doesn't. But our world that says, oh, no, it doesn't, has a hugely, grossly disproportionate rate of divorce. And some scientists will say now, statisticians will say, oh, you know what, the divorce rate's not that bad. It's actually coming down. You know why? People aren't getting married. They just live together and think no, that's good enough. So, yeah, fewer people are getting divorced because fewer people are getting married. And people are waiting longer to get married. And so they're not just rushing in to getting married and finding themselves splitting up. But the reasons for divorce often still carry the same stuff that they used to. And the reasons for cohabitation, they say, living together without being married, are actually more detrimental to the future of your marriage, if you're going to have a marriage. And so even though that's how every TV show goes, even you guys, if you're watching, I know like shows that are made for middle schoolers are not what you guys watch. If you're watching TV, you're probably watching stuff that was really geared towards high schoolers. And so when they talk about like what programming is designed for and what kind of content it's going to have and everything else, like I was watching, when I was a middle schooler, I was watching Saved by the Bell after school, which is like, if you don't watch reruns, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But it was a show about a bunch of teenagers, and they were all like in their 20s, but they were playing teenagers at a high school, and they were all doing this crazy stuff and sort of, engaging in, all sorts of, usually not, sleeping together, but it involved those kinds of topics from time to time. And, but it was a show that was geared towards and featuring high school kids, but I was watching it as a middle school. And that's usually what happens. So when we look at it, we can't just look at culture and say like, oh no, all the shows on Cartoon Network are fine. That's what's made for middle school. And like, that's some of you guys watch all the time. Some of you might. But statistically, you guys are watching more primetime TV with your parents and stuff. And like, I seriously can't think of a show that doesn't have, that like is on primetime, that doesn't involve some form of, tension, romantic tension between the leads. And if there's romantic tension, it's never going to be, oh, we're just dating and we're doing the right things and we're going to wait till marriage. It's never that. It's always, you're waiting for like the moment when like they finally are together is the moment they sleep together. Every time. That's the thing. Like if they kiss, it's almost immediately going to follow everything else. It goes from 0 to 100 in one scene. And sometimes what it shows on like, 7 o'clock primetime television is pretty graphic. Like I'm going like, whoa, dude, I didn't need to see that on TV. So there's that cultural expectation that we live in a hookup culture. That we live in a place where we're going to try things out physically with somebody and see how that works and get some experience and then eventually see about getting married. What's even worse is the porn epidemic that's rampant in our country. And I don't really want to give it a whole lot of attention because I don't value it. I don't want it to be something that we always talk about or hear about or think about. But the fact is, most people are exposed to it around the age of 8. So me bringing this up in middle school, I'm way behind the curve. I missed it. Most of you guys have already seen it, unfortunately. That means my kids who are 6, they're first graders. They're a couple of years away from their theoretical first exposure to that. I want nothing to do with that. I don't want that to be a reality. I don't want that to happen. And it's not just about whether or not people think, like Pastor Nick shared in the main services a few weeks ago, that somebody had told him that it would make his relationship better. So they showed him like wanting to make his life better. Here, learn how this all works by watching these videos. But that's not the reality. The reality is that it fuels child prostitution and human trafficking. That it degrades largely men, but also women, people who watch it. It degrades their view of other humans. It ruins intimacy. It ruins the potential for intimacy, for real relationships, and not just romantically in the future, but even now. It removes your ability to connect on a human level in a much more extreme way, as the reason why your parents might be telling you spend too much time on your phone and saying like, why don't you go talk to real people instead of just texting everybody? Like, I'm sitting next to you. You don't have to text me. You can just turn your head and use your mouth instead of your thumbs and talk with me. And some of you are laughing because you know that was you this morning or yesterday. In that same way, where that really does, though, what it does is lacking that kind of forced interaction where you have to talk to people to communicate with them. Getting to a place where that happens romantically and emotionally puts us in a spot where we can't connect with people, not just future spouse, but just your parents, your friends. You start seeing people as objects. And it's not something you intentionally do. It's not something you go like, I think I'm going to stop seeing the humanity in other people, and I'm just going to start seeing you as some sort of weird object that I like hit a button and it makes me laugh, or hit a button and it makes me happy. But that's what starts happening. It starts degrading our view of other people. Scientifically proven time and time again. There's a great website. If you have the notes, by the way, the notes are here. If you have the notes on the Bible app or on your phone, parents, if you want to look this up on your phone, these are the notes, and it's got links, and one of the links on there, if you have the YouVersion Bible app, you can go right to in the menu, there's a live events option within the menu, and you look at that, and Pantano Student Ministry, there's MSM for middle school ministry, that's right on there, you can find it, or you can go to this link in your phone's browser, and it'll bring it right up, and it's mobile friendly. You can save the notes, you can export them, you can save them in your Bible app if you're signed in. All that stuff, so you can have all these verses, you can take notes on some of the stuff I'm saying. But there's a link on there where you can just go right to it. It's called fightthenewdrug.org. And this website has all sorts of statistics and stuff, and they're not a church website. They're not putting this stuff out there trying to say, hey, because Jesus, we hate what the world says. It's a secular organization looking around and going, what is wrong with people? Why are relationships so sick? Why is 50 Shades Darker even a thing that ever happens? Why was 50 Shades of Grey a book that our society would accept as something that was supposed to be romantic? Why is 50 Shades Darker the sequel to the abuse book about deeper levels of abuse and just pure delusion about what relationships are going to be like? How did that both times come out on Valentine's Day? What's wrong with our culture? Love is powerful and amazing, but it's meant for a specific time and place. Just like eating junk food all the time. Eating spiritually, emotionally, physically, taking in these levels of intimacy and pleasure are meant for a specific time and place in a marriage relationship, not just frivolously as a teenager or as a young adult, but as somebody who's married and committed to somebody else. So we're going to dig into some of this. The Song of Songs 3:5 says, Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and the does of the field. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. It's saying like, look, with all these animals, with nature as my witness, don't awaken love before its proper time. Don't awaken love before the proper moment for its desire. If you do that, bad things happen. Bad things will come. And this is in the middle of a love song. This is in the middle of the Song of Songs in the Bible. It's not something I recommend you go read. It's got some pretty graphic descriptions. It's in the Bible, but it's got graphic descriptions of it sounds like a modern R&B song. It's like singing, all these lyrics about her body and about his body, and he's like, oh, my chest is dripping with sweat and the muscles are awesome. And it's like, it sounds like a Justin Bieber song, it's like, girl, all I can think is your body, and it's that kind of thing. It's very descriptive. It's definitely a PG-13 book or more. But in the middle of all of this description where they're singing to each other, this guy and this girl who are in the middle of courtship, it comes back to this line several times. Do not awaken love until the right time. Because doing that will bring trouble. Doing that will cause things that shouldn't happen. The goal then is not to look at all the negative things. Like I said, I don't want to do just a whole thing just about porn or just about sex. I want to talk to you guys about what you're waiting for so that you want to go there. So that you want to get to that place. So that you want it to be amazing. A couple weeks ago, I shared the story of asking my wife to marry me and said that I had told her that I would not say I love you until it meant, will you marry me? And I held to that. I didn't do it. And it got silly sometimes. I said, sometimes I'd be like, I like you so much. And it was silly. But then when it came time and I got on one knee and I was like, Mandy, I love you. She knew what I was saying. And when I said, will you marry me? Those were synonymous statements. I was saying, I'm ready to commit my life to yours. I'm ready to live up to what it says here in Genesis 2:18. It says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. And I had figured out that, you know what, Mandy's my helper, suitable. She's the person who completes, all the things that I need from God that I don't just get by being a person. She's part of God's plan for how I could connect with a fellow human being. She is a suitable helper and companion for me for the rest of my life. The Lord made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man. He brought her to the man. The man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She should be called woman, for she was taken out of man. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. And I was saying, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to no longer be two different people. I'm ready to be one flesh. I'm ready for this to be a permanent union. And no, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes people turn out to be crazy. Sometimes people turn out to be abusive. Sometimes people just turn out to be self-interested and bail on a relationship. And some of the parents in here may have experienced that. Some of the students in here have for sure experienced that. My parents are not together. I've lived through the child side of divorce, and it's hard, man. If you have to bounce back and forth between homes, that is difficult. That's one of the hardest things, to watch your parents fight over you, to be scared for your mom every time dad calls because it's going to go poorly, because there's going to be yelling and threats and shouting and everything else. I've walked with students through having one or both parents have a restraining order against them. I've had to deal with things where we've had to station somebody at the door knowing that if dad tries to show up and pick up this kid, he's not allowed inside the building. Or where mom and dad aren't allowed in the building at the same time because they cannot see each other without just going at it. And that's horrible. And it always ends up feeling like it's your fault because you're caught in the middle of it. It's not meant to be that way. That's why that's so hard. It's not supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be easy. There's no easy way to do that. It's meant to stay together. But we're broken people and we don't always get that right. We are meant to be one flesh. The goal is for marriage and bonding that way. The goal is for two to become one and stay that way. The way all of the chemicals and everything work in our brains when we have sex, when we connect relationally, physically with another human, there are things that happen to us spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And on every level, there are aspects of that that are meant to bond us together so that two become one flesh. There are things where there are chemicals that go off in your brain that for guys being visual creatures, sear the image of whatever just happened into your head as this is how that happens and where that comes from. So in an ideal situation, one day with your wife, you guys come together and become one flesh, and all the chemicals that go off in your brain when all of that stuff goes down tells your brain that this woman you are looking at right now is the person that you go to for this connection. And there's all these other things. There's an endorphin rush that makes you feel great. There's an adrenaline rush. That's the chemical that sears the image in. It's the same chemical that if you're into sports of any kind, you got I was really into skateboarding and snowboarding, especially when I was younger. Now I'm kind of old and frail, and I get hurt easily. I have a bad knee. I go out and do that stuff, and for some reason I'm heavy now. So when I skateboard and I fall, the ground feels like it's much harder and it hits back. I used to just skate and I would fall off. I'd jump down 10 stairs and eat it. And just be like, let's do that again. And I'd get back up and I'd just do it again. And then I'd roll my ankle and I'd just keep going. It was fine. Maybe tape it up and then I'd just keep going. And it was ridiculous. Adrenaline is an amazing and powerful drug. It's ridiculous. But the other thing that adrenaline does is because of all those adrenaline rushes from skateboarding and snowboarding, the effect that adrenaline has is it sears that image, that scene into my brain as something exciting. This is how we get that adrenaline rush. So then I'm watching, pop in a skate video to get fired up to go skate. It's not that I'm watching the video and going I'm going to do it like that, and this is the technique I need and everything. It's not that kind of thing. I'm watching it and it's just yeah, let's do this, and let's go out and let's just charge out and go huge and go crazy. And because that same visual stimulation is happening in my brain's going like, the adrenaline rush is coming. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So that's the same thing. Whatever it is that's causing that physical romantic interaction, whatever's there at the moment of that adrenaline rush, guys, that's what gets you excited. And it gets you thinking, oh, this is going to happen. So if that's your computer or your phone, because you're looking at things you shouldn't look at, they've proven this. They've put people on like brain scan, like, you know, all the EKG stuff and everything, like they're, you know, doing all the brain scans live while they're having people do things. And guys and girls who are addicted to pornography, when they touch the computer or the phone or whatever device they use to access that, it fires off all those things. As if they were, you know, like it has the same response that it's supposed to have, like with if it was your spouse. Like if I, you know, give, you know, my wife a hug, or like, you know, we're sitting together and like hold hands and there's like, ooh, you know, there's like excitement of like, hey, this is the one person that I have this unique connection with. You hear how weird and sick that sounds? Like if you twist it wrong, like, wait, what? And the mouse is all, ew. Like, I don't want that to, I don't want it to be like that. But that's what happens, knowing that most people have been exposed to this at the age of 8. There's some of you in here that if you really thought about it, you probably can recognize, oh, you know what, that's kind of true. If I really think about it, when I pull out my phone and like open the browser, like it totally, like I get a little rush, I get a little excited. I wonder, should I right now? Is this, you know, it's enticing. Those thoughts come to mind. There's all these other things that emotionally are meant to connect you. Here's the problem with pulling that apart and putting it back together. So the one flesh thing is a spiritual connection. It's not just nice words. It's actually, there's a spiritual connection that happens where you are committing before the Lord and making a vow that bonds you to somebody else. And whether you did that in a church before the Lord in the name of Jesus or not, there's still a spiritual connection because God designed us that way before there was a church, before there was a difference between people who worship Him and not. He made it that way with Adam and Eve, and everyone since then is still part of that same design. We're the broken version, we're the cursed version because of sin, but we still have that in us. And so when we take that and put it together and all the physical chemicals and all the emotions and all the spiritual connection and all of the mental connection of like, wow, I've rearranged my life to fit around this person and everything else and all of that, and you rip that apart and then you put it back together. How many of you all have had something that's Velcro that's kind of old, and after a while, like you kind of put it and it just falls, like it just doesn't work anymore, right? Like old Velcro just kind of stops connecting. It's that same kind of thing. It's got all these hooks and loops. It's a hook and loop fastener. The hard, like rough side is a bunch of little tiny plastic hooks. And the other side is a bunch of little tiny fabric loops. It's a bunch of little, you know, rainbows of fabric. And you put them all together and all the plastic hooks latch on and hold really tight. And if you just put it on one time and leave it, it's super strong. But if you keep ripping it apart and putting it back together, all those loops on the fabric side start getting ripped apart and all the hooks start getting bent open and they don't connect anymore. And they stop connecting as well. And they've shown an increase in everything from how many partners somebody has or serial dating or whatever to marriages and every level of human connection, that somebody who has given their heart away multiple times, the attachment gets weaker and weaker, and you're more and more likely to have this happen more often. The Velcro gets worse and worse the more you rip it apart. Somebody who's been married once and divorced, if they get remarried, that marriage has at least a 3 times greater risk of failure or ending in divorce. If a third marriage is like 10 times as likely as a first marriage to end in divorce. And then it starts jumping way up. It's like exponentially different. Same with multiple people. Somebody who's had, you know, nobody before marriage. Somebody who's waited until marriage to ever have any connection like that with somebody. The likelihood that they will be happy and satisfied in marriage in every category, including physical, is way higher than somebody who's tried all the things. Somebody who's tried everything versus somebody who just This is all they know, is this one person. They're much happier that way. People who live together before marriage are at least 3 times as likely to get divorced because there's no connection there. They've already done this part, and there's been so little connection, they think there's not going to be any difference, and it's more likely that their relationship's going to fall apart. So here's some more scripture on this, and some of these notes are in here, but Matthew 5:31-32 says, "It's been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you, anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery. Anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." God hates divorce, not because you're evil or your parents are evil for getting a divorce. That's not what I'm saying. If parents, some of you are in here, if you've been divorced, it's not saying that God hates you, but he hates divorce. He hates sin. And divorce is sin. It's undoing this bond that was meant to be forever. He designed you on every level, every layer of you is meant to connect permanently in marriage. And to tear that apart hurts you, but it also hurts God to watch you do that. He hates that. The design was never for this. It was meant to just be a one-time thing. Matthew 5:27-30, later on he says, "You've heard it said, don't commit adultery," which is being with somebody who's not your spouse. "But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out, throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away." It's better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to go into hell. He said, don't just give in. Cut out those things. Now, obviously, if it was really, given the statistics, over 90% of men in this country have at one point or another habitually looked at pornography. That's staggering. Women, it's about half of you and growing. So at that rate, our country should be a country full of handless blind people. It's not what Jesus meant. Right? It said, if your right eye causes you to sin, cut it out. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. What he's saying is remove whatever is continually going into that temptation. If you have a problem with porn, stop, turning your phone. Get parental locks like crazy. Stop using secret apps to download junk. If it's a relationship, if there's stuff going on in middle schools that I can't even say in public. Statistically, there's an article on Fight the New Drug. Just the title of the article, I won't even describe everything else. The title of the article is Sex Before Kissing, the effect that our porn-saturated society is having on 15-year-old girls. And it's depressing to read this article. It was a public study then. It wasn't, again, it's not a church thing. It's just saying, this is happening in middle schools. The relationships are getting so twisted that the way girls identify whether or not a guy likes them is how they respond after they're physically intimate, not whether or not he writes her a note or buys her flowers or asks her out or flirts with her, which is what it used to be. And even then, I would say, ladies, you're too young. Don't be trying to date boys right now. Don't get all wrapped up in that. Don't get all messed up about that stuff. You're not ready for that. We talked about the storge love, about how that call to society, that call to people to put others before yourself, to love people in a way that elevates their value to equal or above yours, so that you are acting selflessly for the good of the people around you. We talked about philia love, the philos love, the brotherly love, where that is a connection between two people that is more like a brother and sister, more like a family member, where you're just oh man, these are my people. I can go to them with anything. They're there for me no matter what. That these kinds of love are what you need to be building on. And ultimately, one day in your marriage, if you get married one day, that's where you add in this eros love to those other two. Where you put becoming one flesh. Two people becoming one flesh means a lot of sacrifice. Where you put somebody else above yourself and say, this is what my life is for. Not, man, all I want is for myself to feel good. Because ultimately, it makes it not feel good. Remove the things that get you in trouble. If you have a friend who's leading you down a bad path, or you have a boyfriend or girlfriend who's getting you to do things you shouldn't be doing, stop hanging out with them. Put some distance. Be like, look, I can't be getting into this stuff. That's not okay for me. The Bible speaks into this idea of temptation, of this idea of stepping away from it, of cutting it off. Here's what it looks like. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. No matter what that temptation is, if it's all your friends saying, you have to do this or you're not cool, or you have to do this or guys won't like you, or you have to, guys, you got to be like, what? You're still a virgin? You're in 8th grade? Like, no way, man. Like, dude, yeah, you should be. But I don't want to do the math, but when I was in 3rd grade, not 3rd grade, when I was in middle school, in 8th grade, that was the temptation or the peer pressure put on me. That was a long time ago. It hasn't gotten any better since then. But I had friends going like, what? You've never been with a girl, dude? You're already 13? Statistically, it's way earlier than that now that that's happening. That doesn't mean that it's normal. That means that, guys, like, this is stuff that you're going to face. And if it's not you, you might be going like, what? None of my friends do this? Isn't crazy? Yeah, they do. They may not be telling you about it, and that's great. Stay out of it. But if that is you, that's what I'm trying to speak to you, to call you into something better. And for those of you who haven't experienced that temptation and that push or that pressure yet, know that it's coming and know how to face it. There is no temptation beyond what you can bear. God will give you a way out. His Holy Spirit will provide a means for you to overcome it. It's not permanent. Temptation is not permanent. You can get past it. James 4:7, submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Most of the time, temptation, when it comes, somebody's like, hey, look at this. Hey, come over and like, hey, now that you're at my house, hey, let's watch this. No, heck no. I'm walking away. I'm going to go tell your parents what you're showing me. Whatever it takes, walk away from that junk. That's where most people see that stuff, is over at a friend's house, where somebody sends them a link, or somebody's hanging out and they're like, look at this thing on my phone. I saw somebody who's a freshman shared a photo on Facebook the other day that was like a secret text code of like old school T9 texting, where you hit the button 4 times to get S, hit 7 4 times to get S. The parents know what I'm talking about, like when you had to keep hitting all the buttons. And the text code that a student, a freshman student that I know, 14-year-old guy, shared this. And it said, the thing said, send nudes. 14 years old. He's asking for that. Dude, you guys, don't give into that. Like, what kind of trash is that? I'm not talking to you anymore. Don't feel pressured to do that, ladies. Don't feel pressured to act that way, guys. Job 31, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. But here's the real goal. Here's the key. Make that covenant with your eyes. Get software if internet porn is a problem for you. When it comes to physical relationships with other people, make plans to stay away from people that tempt you into this, and make decisions. Say, this is my line. I will not kiss till I'm engaged. I will not kiss until my wedding day. I will not do any of those other things. I will not do anything that I couldn't do in front of my parents at all, period. If you don't plan that, then it's easy to get sucked into it and be like, oh, what? I didn't mean to go this far. I don't know how we got here. But if you say, no, I don't go anywhere near that stuff, it's easier to keep yourself guarded and to keep yourself safe. Don't be like me. I fell into that trap in 8th grade. I lost my virginity. In 8th grade, I got drunk for the first time. I got high for the first time. And I was with a girl for the first time. And it went downhill from there. It doesn't just like suddenly like, oh yeah, it's been there, done that, I'm good. And you just keep trying stuff. If you've already gone there, There's redemption, there's forgiveness, there's hope. Don't focus on the sin. That's where shame comes from. Focusing on everything I've ever done wrong. Band, you can come on up. We're going to take communion and get out of here. And worship. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. Focus on what is great in this world. Focus on what God is calling you to do. And it's so much easier when you know where you're headed, when you know what you're focused on. When Matthew 6:33 says, fix your eyes on the kingdom of heaven. 1 Corinthians 13:4 says, love is patient and kind. When you know that you are meant to be patient in what you are called to, that there is a time for the things that are tempting you, but it's not now. When you have your eyes fixed on the kingdom and you're headed towards Jesus, when you're headed on these right things and you have other things come at you and try to distract you, you go, no, that doesn't fit. That doesn't work. That's not part of this. I don't have time for a boy who tells me, if you really love me, you do this. Yeah, you're right. I don't love you. I'm not ready to get married. That's a line guys have been using since before I was born. Don't fall for it, ladies. It's trash. It's code for I'm a sleaze bag who doesn't care about it. Guys, don't say that. Don't be that guy. Don't fall for a girl who tries to tell you that garbage. If you really cared about me, you'd do this. No. If I cared about you, I'd treat you like the princess that you are, like the daughter of the King of Heaven that you truly are. See people for that. Recognize guys, girls, when you're hanging out with somebody. You're not hanging out with somebody who may provide you some sort of pleasure or intimacy. But recognize that you are looking at daughters and sons of the King of the universe and treat them appropriately. Focus on what is pure and right and holy, not on sin. And if you've already been in that place of sin and shame, turn your eyes upward and focus on what is pure, and it's amazing how that starts springing out of it. There's better things for you. Jesus died to forgive you for these things. So if you're in a place of shame with any of that, if you're in a place of feeling like I've messed up and I can't be right, we're going to take communion and remember that Jesus' body was broken on the cross for you. Jesus' blood was poured out to make a new agreement that if you believe in him, your sins are forgiven, you are clean, you are saved. So as we enter into communion, wherever you're at with all this stuff, even if it's just going like, God, I want to honor that sacrifice that you've made, and I haven't done any of this stuff, but I don't want to do this stuff, and I'm committing to you to live in a way that honors and glorifies you for dying on the cross. And if you have been there, you can come to him with forgiveness, ask him for forgiveness, and receive it. Bring your offerings and be selfless. Bring your hearts in communion and worship. Let's stand before our King and remember the awesome